brand new first episode of sports, movies, and fun. So basically, what we're going to be doing here is Mike Valverde, and my partner Neiko Sigona. We basically love sports, we love movies, and we thought, you know what, we really need to put this together. So um, through this painstaking coronavirus, staying alone, watching movie after movie. I'm sure everybody's started to develop a binging quality about themselves. We figured, why not? We've known each other how many years now? About 5 years.
Oh, I gotta say yeah, 5.5, 6. I was a junior in college when we met randomly through a Craigslist ad, and we
Yeah,
were doing a podcast for free together. And then
right.
took off from there when that business fell through, and we just stayed in contact and created our own podcast thanks to you. So yeah, crazy. And that in social media, we've stayed in contact for all these years.
Yeah. It's totally. Yeah, and it's just so weird how one Craigslist ad can make a whole difference in your life. It's funny. I've the closest people that I've had is because of that one failed. I don't even remember what it's called. Sports fantasy warehouse or something to that effect. I mean, if anything that was beneficial to all that was getting to meet you, and it's just pretty cool. So um, it just with the trying times that's been going on, as everybody knows, with what happened with Floyd and police departments, and we figured that probably the best movie to sort of inspire hope and hopefully change was doing something with Jackie Robinson. And there's so much stuff out there with Jackie Robinson, from Ken Burns documentary on baseball to his own special on Jackie Robinson to Jackie Robinson's movie that starred Jackie Robinson in it. And we just wanted to do something that was about Jackie Robinson, but something that was also current. So we chose 42. And so start off. I know you have a lot of baseball experience, not only just through. I mean, I have experience, but all the way up until like high school level. You've gone beyond that. And being in the Bay Area, why don't you sort of describe what your experience has been as far as baseball and the people that you've met?
Yeah, well, I'll first start off. I mean, I was lucky enough to be raised, kind of in a little bit of a, sheltered, area where we weren't really exposed to much racism. I'm half white, half, my other side is Mexican and Pacific Islander. So, I was kind of a cultural chameleon. I was able to kind of mix and match. So when I first heard of Jackie Robinson as a kid, I didn't like him because he was a Dodger. It had nothing to do with
Right?
skin, right? And
We're
then when
Giant fans.
right, exactly. And then you find out the things that happened to him. That's what really helped open my eyes to a lot of the issues at hand when it came to sports. I think it's very easy as young children, especially children like you and I that are white, to grow up loving and idolizing these sports figures, but not really seeing behind the scenes because we're so young. We're not able to process the idea that someone would call Jackie Robinson the N word right now. Like, I even like, I know rap songs word for word, and I always drop it. And like, you just to hear it, like, it makes me like, ooh, like, it kind of, you know what I mean? It's just like, what? But this is 2020, so it's different. But it's funny because it's 2020 and there's still all these issues going on. The main reason I pushed for this movie and that you and I agreed so quickly on it was because of all the civil unrest that we're seeing happening right now as we're trying to fight the systemic issues that are in America. And it's tough. It's the what's it called, the cultural pot, the melting pot. And it's a melting pot country, but there's so many different people that haven't been heard and taken care of. And it's really, it's so late for this to be happening, but I'm glad that something is happening. I'm glad that everyone's talking, about it. I'm very privileged. I've gone to private school my whole life. My dad and my parents were very young when they had me, so I was always working. My mom was helping work in the front office for financial aid, but I was always very privileged to go to schools that the teachers had even extra investment in our education because it kind of meant more money for them. But it's sad because two of my schools recently have made the news for the wrong reasons. My first one was my high school, St. Francis High School in Mountain View, really prestigious high school in the Bay Area. A lot of superstar kids go there. A lot of really rich, wealthy, well-to-do children. We had, Daniel Nava, Daniel Descalso, Eric Burns go there for baseball. We have a few other current guys right now working their way through the minors. We also had Ronnie Lott, his children went there. Steve Marici, his children went there, so we'd see them at the football games. But unfortunately, St. Francis recently had some graduating seniors and a few other children, I believe, that are juniors on the football team. I forgot what it was, but they had some really insensitive and racially just disgusting posts on a little Snapchat group. And luckily, for everybody out there seeking justice, some of the children on that group realized that it was wrong and were able to take screenshots of it. However, it went a lot deeper than that. There was multiple instances of it, and so now that was, making the news. So I've been in contact a lot recently with a lot of my former Lancer classmates, a lot of people that experience their own issues. Like like I said, I'm white and I still experience some of my own issues. And I posted on Facebook, the whole thing where for those of us on financial aid, you had to work hours to get that financial aid. Even though St. Francis had tons of donors, $10 million donated for an art center, a beautiful new baseball complex that I was lucky enough to play on. But it was just insane that I had to go work for 2 weeks, where moving rocks from the gardening area, where scraping gum off the bottom of desks, or cleaning bathrooms and windows, just things that 2 weeks before I was even stepping on foot to campus as a freshman. You know what I mean? I'm already doing janitorial services, and I'm seeing all these other kids on campus kind of looking at us and like, you kind of got the idea, like, man, like, I really want to go here, but is this really like, I got, it felt kind of demeaning. I've worked
Sure.
produce since I was a little kid in my family business. When I got grounded, I do construction with my grandfather, and I got to work with a lot of really hardworking immigrants, and I understood the difference between hard work and almost demeaning work. And it seems like, St. Francis and other private schools put you in that situation so that you either want to start paying, or that you would work harder, like kind of like I did. And I actually ended up getting a little scholarship my junior and senior year, for my involvement on campus in the club, and just being a doing what I had to do in my grades and everything. But yeah, it was just that was one thing I noticed from my former school, and that's just me as a white kid complaining about 2 weeks of work. Can you imagine going there for 4 years? With your skin color being different than the majority of the students there, and just man, and it was a weird thing, Mike. And now, if I can continue my rant real quick, St. Martin's University. I went to a very small school to play baseball my freshman year, and St. Martin's University recently they got in trouble. It's up in Olympia, or excuse me, Lacey, right by Olympia, in Washington. So they got in trouble. They had one of their male soccer players post the Hitler hand over the black fist, saying "paper beats rock." Right, and it was just like, right, it was just
Wow.
like, what the, oh my god. So right when that hit, everybody just lost their freaking minds, right? And like, you and I stay in contact through social media. I've stayed in contact with a lot of my friends from St. Martin's, and a lot of them happen to be people of color, so they were outraged, and I saw it right away, and I was pissed off, and I was like, this doesn't even affect me personally, because I don't have to go through those injustices. I don't have to worry about a freaking Hail Hitler sign. It's just like, oh my, it was so bad. And the school took a little while. The academic, excuse me, the athletic department had to take a while before moving him, from the male soccer team. I don't know if he's been expelled yet or not, but it's just tough at these schools that preach zero tolerance to hate, and racism, that when it is blatantly displayed by male students that are typically athletes and usually well off white kids, and it gets ignored, that is where the real problem begins. And um, you know, I don't know. You saw my Facebook, or you saw my Facebook post, I think, right? Yeah, and we commented back and forth. So, can you give me real quick your what you thought when you saw this? I mean, like I said, I've gone to private school my whole life. I live in the Bay Area, Redwood City. Our weather is known. That's our slogan, is like the best weather. You know what I mean? It's just like
Right.
we're in such a great area, yet I'm still, as a bystander, not as a bystander, but as a third party, seeing this racism, where I'm just like, man, really, is that happening?
Yeah. I think. I mean, I never want to give an excuse for racism, but also I think kids are kids, and they're very much going to play the antagonist to situations. So I think it's a serious problem, regardless of that. Nobody should ever be putting the Nazi salute over anything that's promoting equality. I mean, why in the world would someone, regardless if it's the Nazi salute or not, it's hate. That represents hate, and so why would you ever want to choose hate over something that's equality? So that right there. But also, I would like to know more about what these kids are thinking. Like, are you doing this just to be, a punk? Are you doing this just to because you're 17 and you're just like, oh, what would be funny? Hey, if we just do this, So obviously there's problems because that should never be done. But also, I'm like, okay, well, let's get deeper involved. Maybe we can teach these kids that this is why it's wrong. Not just to say, okay, you're wrong, but this is why it's wrong. And if we can teach that, then they can teach other kids about why not to do this instead of just treating it like a joke, or if it's serious and you really got some deeper issues going.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and so I kind of, yeah, I want to touch on one of the points you said. They're just kids. Because my first time, when I saw, I was up in Washington, right, and there's these some students that were from Eastern Washington. Now, I didn't really know about Idaho and Eastern Washington. I didn't really understand the whole, how racist it is over there. So when I get there, one of my teammates, on his in his dorm has a Confederate flag hanging. And, like, I went
Wow.
right? Like, listen to this. Like, I was going through like a super like crazy phase where I really wanted to show off my San Francisco. So I'm wearing my Let Timmy Smoke shirt. I'm wearing bombs, bombs, right? I look like a total freaking idiot to them, right? And there's
Right.
they look like a total idiot to me. And I'm
Right.
looking at everyone in the room. I'm like looking at my buddy, my roommates from Nevada, a couple teammates from Oregon. I'm like, hey, hey,
We
how
gotta.
is this
Yeah.
allowed? And that was a player that would say the N word in baseball practice when he would fail. So he'd swing a miss, go, oh, boom. And like, I heard that, and I was like, okay. And then a couple other freshmen of our freshman class, my roommate included, started doing that in practice. So I lost my mind and I called them all out, right? And I'm an outspoken Cali kid, but at the same time, I'm 18 years old, and there's a lot of older kids out there, right? And I'm like, hey, dude, you can't say that. I cussed them out a little bit because our coaches are watching. Our coaches are sitting there listening to this, right? And I'm like, no one's gonna say anything to stop this. So I pop off and I'm like, hey, you guys ever go back to the Bay? You guys ever go back to where I'm from? Y'all gonna get your asses kicked. I was like, stop saying this is ignorant. This is stupid. Y'all are white as hell. I was like, just stop. They're like, oh, go back to the gay ass Bay Area, bitch. And they just like talked all that shit. I was just like, for real, dude. So then, later on, I hear a couple of my roommate and a couple of the teammates are in my room. I come back from the restroom and I hear them drop that N word again. I'm like, hey, no. And I was like, not in this room. And I was like, I can't control you guys. I can't,
Right.
words don't mean, jack to you guys out there. But I was like, no, not in this room. It's not happening. This is not what we do here. And then, I laid that line, and maybe there's better ways I could have went about it, because it didn't seem to get through to anybody because they still, continued on their racist ways. But at the same time, I just had to, you know, draw the line in the sand. And now, Mike, let's draw into Jackie Robinson, the star of today's, topic. Him having to face all this racism, all these things, and yet to persevere and to turn the other cheek.
We win if the world is convinced of.
There's a lot of things that we'll talk about that later, but Branch Rickey asking him, kind of like Jesus, to turn the other cheek when someone strikes you, when someone shouts something so inhumane about your family or just terrible things you heard. But talking about right before I turn over to you, Mike, I've been listening a lot to Otis Redding, sitting on the dock of the bay, and I was, listening. I was looking at the lyrics. I like, all the song, all the words and everything. And one of them was talking about, going from the Georgia coast all the way to California. Now, granted, he went to, San Francisco, whereas Jackie Robinson's family went from Georgia all the way to Pasadena. But it was still just interesting that yesterday I just looked that up, and then, then watching the little documentary on Jackie Robinson that you had sent me, talking about his early childhood, and there it was. He traveled, coast to coast with just his mother and his siblings. So, giving the mic back to you, Mike. What do you, kind of just walk us through what you thought about, Jackie's, kind of adolescent life, and what kind of led to him being an amazing character that changed and revolutionized sports in America, and even the way white people, white men in power, saw men of color in America.
Yeah, well, I think number one is we have to look at the time, and you're looking at civil rights in the meaning of civil rights, and you have just a lot of, I mean, almost everywhere it was common to put down black people. They were segregated. They were not looked at as humans. They had no voting power whatsoever. So whatever districts they had to live in, they had to live in because that's how white people wanted them to live. Basically, you had white people in power who can vote and putting them in segregated areas that were just totally inhumane living conditions as well. So they really want people at that time really wanted a separation of black people and white people. They didn't want nothing to do with them. They probably wish they were never in America. And since they were there, the best thing for the white people to believe in was just to push them off into little corner areas and just pretend that they didn't exist. So when you have someone that sort of breaks through all that and becomes on a national spotlight, then white people become scared and don't know what to do because now they're not controlling anymore. They're now in his face and they don't know what to do. So the only way they know how to act is to be racist, to shout certain things, and for Jackie Robinson to not have a father because he left when he was like I think 5 months old, and be raised by a mother. And I think that gave him a lot of strength because he had to sort of grow up and be the man of the household. And the fact that he was strong enough to understand, okay, where his place was as far as I need to turn the other cheek, as you mentioned, because if I don't and I fail at this, that means all the other black players that deserve to be in the major league won't get a chance because the first impression is always the lasting impression. And if he screwed up, then no one else would have probably gotten a chance. Maybe down the line, maybe 20 something years, whatever, maybe, but not as soon as we would like to have hoped. So he had that riding on his shoulders. And then he had to have the inner strength to take all that abuse and just sort of put it in the trash can and say, okay, I know you're the one with the problem. I know you're the one that can't control yourself, but I'm going to control myself and be the man that I need to be to sort of. I can't remember. There was a movie, and in the movie it said, I think maybe it was you might know. In the movie it says baseball is the only place where a black man can wave a stick at a white person and not get shot.
I can't that one, but that's
And that line just completely blew me away, and it stayed with me ever since. And that's how it was, you know. But anyways, so he had to endure all that, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that his mother was the only one that raised him, and he had to be the man, and also military experience, discipline, because he was in the military before baseball. Also, the fact that he knew a lot of white people playing college sports, like in UCLA, like you mentioned, played track, all those kind of things. What else have I not mentioned that? Why don't you talk about his brother a little bit?
Yeah, you just took the words out of my mouth. I was gonna say earlier about when the white people when they kind of redline the neighborhoods or such, and they're trying to keep everybody together. The enviable places are safe for the rich white for the what I mean. It's just messed up, but it's funny because in the case of Jackie Robinson, now they're in Pasadena, so I believe they're the only black family at the time in their neighborhood. Nobody else let their children play with the Robinson, right? So it was just Mac, the older brother of Jackie, and Jack, right? Jack Robinson. So they would play together their boy sports. I forgot the sister's name, but yeah, they would just play their sports together, and they both came out to be fantastic athletes. When I was watching this documentary or the little clip that you had sent me on YouTube, I got some cool notes I was able to watch and really zone in on it. But so Mac, he was actually the runner-up, another pun, to Jesse Owens 100-meter at the Nazi Olympics in 1936. So I didn't know because I knew Mac did the broad jump, right? Yeah, they were really good at the broad jump, both of them. But I didn't know that he also did 200 meters. So he got second place, and this was the the Aryan Olympics. This is the the show of force that Hitler was promising everybody that a superhuman would come out, and it was Jesse Owens. And it was funny that second place right behind him is the biggest athlete, the most important. I want to argue that Jack Robinson is the most important athlete in all of American sports. Obviously you can't say best. There's so many, great Willie Mays and Michael Jordan, all these guys, but I want to say the most important, because the guys I just mentioned too were able to play because of Jackie Robinson. But anyway, it was interesting to see that Jackie would follow in his brother's footsteps. I think they both went to Pasadena City College, and that is where Mac held the broad jump record. And then Jackie broke it there, and then also at UCLA, he was the college champion at the broad jump as well. This one was Mike. He had a pretty funny nickname. It was the Gridiron Phantom for football. Yeah, Jackie Robinson. He was a leading ground gainer, and he is getting 12 yards of rush attempts.
Wow.
Imagine that in fantasy football. I'm like, good.
Wow, that's crazy.
10 times, right?
He'd be number one off the board for sure.
Good Lord, yeah, seriously. And they were calling him. I mean, the first thing I heard, they called him the best athlete, the best all-around athlete in America, and then they called him the best Negro athlete ever. So then they had to real quick throw that in there right after, just to kind of specify. They're like, yeah, he might be the best all-around athlete right now in America, but the color of his skin is still going to prevent him from competing at the top level, which he wanted to. So the majors weren't even in his mind, like you had mentioned about pardon me, about the military. Once he went to the military and once he came back from World War II, he was actually looking to coach high school baseball or any type of high school sports, and there's no availability. And then he ended up signing with Kansas City, and that's kind of where the legend of Jackie Robinson went on there. Mike, real quick, what do you think? We had this whole Drew Brees thing, and it's ruffled a lot of feathers. But when these African American men, when these black men are fighting alongside the white men, and they come back home, and it seems like only the white men are getting the better jobs, only the white men are getting remembered as the heroes, and now they have to go sit in the back of the bus. Now they have to go use a separate restroom. Now they have to, go to separate schools and water phones. And it kind of that bothers me as a millennial, obviously, because we're raised with a little different mindset. But it's just crazy to think that these men would go out and fight. My Italian great grandfather, he was in World War II, and obviously the Italians, they were really racist against them too, but not nearly to the level of the black community. But it's just it's I guess I was kind of wandering there with that question, but what did you think? To hear the story, I guess Jackie Robinson comes back and can't even find a good job. Like,
right.
What's the point of going to war then?
Right, yeah, and I think a lot of that too. I mean, even during the war, they're segregated. My grandfather was telling me that he and just like almost all the races, you had segregation. So black people would be in their own little tents, and then Hispanics, and then the whites, of course. But you're right about the way Hispanics and those Italians and were more European, so they're not treated as bad as someone who's dark skinned. And I don't, it'd be interesting to sort of we know from white people what they felt about black people, and how they were treated by white people. It would be interesting. The Hispanics and the Orientals are sort of a third party to it. They sort of get both. They get sort of the well treatment, and they get the racism. It'd be interesting to see how they thought from sort of a third point of view on what was happening, because they were left out on a lot of stuff. They weren't probably participating in the racism, but they were also probably getting a lot of the benefits white people were as well. It's then even in his career, I think before he signed the big contract with Branch Rickey, when Branch Rickey was sort of saying, okay, I'm going to give you this amount of money, and it's not great, but it is a contract, and I'll give you a signing bonus and everything. Robinson had to work selling dishwashers. Yeah, he was like at Maytag selling appliances just to make ends meet for his wife and his child.
And it's funny because today I was watching. Real quick, kind of we were talking about your grandfather. You told him that was segregated in the army. I was watching something about Jackie Robinson earlier, and it mentioned that the prisoners, the POWs, prisoners from the German, whatever, the Nazi party, they had better rights. They were allowed to use the white officers' chambers and all that stuff compared to the U.S. black soldiers. When we put perspective, it's like, whoa, the prisoners of war were able to have better, access,
better advantages than people of our own country,
right? just can you imagine as a black man in the 1930s, and you had just fought the Nazis for to your wits end, and then now they're having better access. Yeah. Oh,
It's sort of like Little League, when at the end of the game you get your like orange and your juice, It's like having your teammates that are black and you as white people get orange and juice, and then having the team you just played against come over, give them the orange and juice before you give your own black players on your own team the orange and juice. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It's just horrible.
God. And now here, moving on to another kind of random, thing I had heard. So they're talking about Ricky, right? They're talking about Branch Rickey, the GM of the Dodgers, that was brave enough to go against all the other major leaguers, GMs, all the gentleman agreement they had to keep, anybody of color out of baseball. It's funny that when I heard the name Ricky today, I'm like, oh yeah, Ricky Henderson. You know what I mean? And it's funny because you think back of all these base stealers, right? Ricky Henderson, Lou Brock, Vince Coleman, Maury Wills, all these superstar, base stealers that Billy Hamilton now, that probably emulated a lot of their game off of Jackie Robinson's daring base running when he was playing, right? Because Jackie had to make himself needed on the field, right? Ricky, Branch, he really made it obvious, he made it apparent, and they made it apparent in the movie that, hey, you need to prove that these white boys need you. You know what I mean? They're going to be racist. Until you could, knock down all these things, it's going to take years. Your skill, your talent is going to be the one thing that's going to keep you here. So it was interesting to see how Jackie Robinson's, daring base running and, stealing of home and such, all the notorious stories of those, has led to so many great base stealers of color in the major leagues in the following years. So just kind of a random thought I had, and yeah, I don't know, I thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of that. What now? What did you think of his sort of running style and the way he led off on first base? And, I mean, I don't know if that would work today. The way he hunched down with his fingers, and I mean, those skills worked for him then. But what do you think of like today's game? How would they have worked?
Yeah. So before we say anything bad about the movie, I thought it was a fantastic movie. It's just sometimes when you get these actors and non-athletic actors in these certain movies, or I guess non-sport specific actors, because baseball's not an easy sport. Like yesterday, I was doing some base running and I'm shuffling. I was like, oh, groin, hamstring, back. I'm like, good lord, right? But if you look like hunched over bug and you're like sputtling like that, like it was Adwick Woods. You get picked off, 9 out of 10 times because your feet are just constantly moving and not doing anything, proper. You're just like moving up and down. So yes, as a baseball coach, it kind of bothered me. Also seeing the head coach of the Dodgers, he held the bat with his left hand, and then he was throwing up the grounders to hit it with that hand. Way easier to hold it with your top hand, throw it up with your left hand, hit it in front of you. Nice and simple. Your strong hand has control of the bat. You know what I mean? Like things I learned in Little League coaching my 8-year-old brother. Just I don't know. Just
right.
From like this is a I don't know how many millions it took to make this movie, but like you think like one person would be like, maybe when you're stealing home, you shouldn't be from a standstill. Maybe when you're stealing the third base, you should be moving your feet forward. You know what I mean? It's just like little things like that. But I was a big fan. Just getting to see a lot of things, and they kind of like the movie hypes it up, right? They really have the Philadelphia manager just really getting into him, really getting into him, really getting into him. They do like the three things. You know how Hollywood loves the three things.
Yeah.
3 times, boom, boom, boom. What was like a 2-0 count. He had a great hit. It was a third pitch. So little things like that, you kind of know, as a sports fan lover, watching movies, like okay, this is probably gonna happen. Oh, okay, he's been berating him. He's gonna have one failure. Maybe one game will be bad, and then the next time, oh, this guy hits him in the head. Next time he comes up against him in the movie, he's gonna hit a home run. Things like that. It was a little, not obvious, or cliche, but just kind of like it was cool to see because you had a feeling like, okay, this guy's a Hall of Famer for a reason. This guy had to stand through a lot of BS. So yeah, I wish they had made Jackie Easton a little more athletic in the movie because he definitely was more explosive and athletic with his first step than they showed him. But I mean, how you gonna copy one of the greatest ever?
yeah, especially as uniquely talented as he was. It's pretty hard. What now? Other than that, how well do you think they adhere to the story as far as the plot, and do you think they represented that pretty well as far as what he went through as a person and sort of the duality between Branch Rickey and
It's an interesting point you bring up, because a lot of times in these racist movies, it's really tough, because I feel I'm always a cynic, right? I'm always like kind of playing devil's advocate. Um, so I'm always looking at, like, okay, what white guy was over exaggerated? I was like, right, what guy was way too nice in real life? Like, maybe
Yeah, it ain't gonna happen.
just really want to make him look nice to the white audience. You know what I mean?
Right.
That also sometimes kind of plays a part in it, or also I feel like a lot of times, like, or perhaps again, Remember the Titans. A lot of times, the scenes of racism are almost hurried at the end. It's like they show a big, explosive racist, part of the movie, but then they kind of hurry through it, and they don't really break it down and give that enough time, because I think it makes white people uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Like, when you see these things, you get uncomfortable. When I watch radio, and you watch, a mentally challenged African American young, kid locked up or tied up in a shed, and these kids are throwing footballs at it, like, that made my stomach cringe. I was probably 8 or 10 years old. I forgot how old I was. Anyway, just things like that. When you see things that are wrong, that people of your, kind of ethnic background are doing against others that have no way to stand up for it, it makes you uncomfortable. And I think a lot of times movies, unfortunately, they kind of hurry through certain scenes where they could actually, if they wanted to, really hammer in on it and really break it down to show us, this is a disgusting and vile word, but let's show you how many times this manager said it in the game. Let's show you how many times that little boy in Cincinnati and his father kept yelling it just because everyone around them was doing it, and that's how they had grown up.
And that you bring up that scene in the crowd, and it's amazing. I really I had a lot of problems with the racism. I mean, as far as the movie goes, because it's the one thing that I hate about movies, especially when they're talking about racism, is two things. One is you have sort of the movies that show that black people can't do anything for themselves, and so you need the white guy to come in and rescue them, and then he's the hero, and all that kind of stuff, and the audience cheers for the white guy. But in all reality, you can have a black person defend themselves and be the king of it all, right? So a lot of movies are that way, where the white person becomes the hero of the black people. I don't like that. I also don't like the fact that we already know going in that there's racism involved in this movie. I think when you know almost one of the opening scenes at the gas station, you go to the bathroom, right? It's like, do you really need to have that? I mean, we know that that's involved, right? I don't think it's necessary to show a gas attendant being racist towards Jackie Robinson, because we already know that that's already involved. Um, and which is interesting is they sort of flipped on itself, where um, Jackie Robinson is not allowed to go into the restroom, right? And then smartly says, okay, well, if I'm not allowed to go in your restroom, then we'll go find a gas station that will allow me to go to the restroom, and now you're losing out on money. Interesting is the bathroom scene in the airport, right? His whites only, and his wife goes, and what does he try to do? Prevent her from going into the restroom, and it's just like, wasn't it like 40 minutes ago you were angry that you couldn't go to the restroom? Now you're trying to prevent your wife from going into the restroom now, and it's like, you just did that, and it's like, what kind of message are you sending? It's this sort of hypocritical kind of messaging going on with it. And then of course you have to have the cop, the racist cop, and if any of the racist things that were unnecessary, that was completely unnecessary. It's like, why do you always have to have a racist cop? We know it exists. We know it's out there. You don't need to have some kind of crazy situation to show that cops were racist in the 50s. That's already known. Now the whole situation with the manager, that was great. That's all you need. You proved your point. You proved your racist point in the movie.
And I really appreciated how that part they kind of drew back on history as well. Not that that Jewish people or that Italian people had it anywhere near as bad as people that had to grow up with the slavery and all that oppression that comes with all the generations after. But they talked about we call Hank Greenberg racial things. We call Joe DiMaggio racial things. So he was trying to justify it, but it was just funny because that was his justification. But at the same time,
Right.
attacking some of the greatest players, and it's like,
yeah,
man, as everybody was watching this Jordan documentary, like, do you really want to poke these great of athletes? Look how they're able to internalize all that anger and put it into a product that's able to beat you and take you out of a job. Right? If they're able to shut you up, you're not going to have a job for very long.
Exactly, and that was a great scene too, and I'm glad you mentioned that because it shows how people can just excuse racism by being racist towards others, and it's like no, you're a racist pig, regardless of if you're racist to everybody, you're still racist. It's not an excuse for you to be racist to somebody else. And also interesting was that picture that he took with him was, and I've seen that picture like 1,000 times. I mean, I know that picture so well. I had no idea that there was so much racial overtones before and prior to taking that picture. So I was just like, whoa, that's where all that came from.
Did you ever read those? I don't think so. But these books came out when I was a child, so obviously long after you were your child. But it's baseball card books where a boy was able to travel back in time when he got a certain card. So it was like Honest
Oh
and
wow,
Babe,
cool.
Jackie and Me, the Mick and Me. Anyway, so he would get these awesome cards. He was a boy without a dad, and he really wanted baseball. Anyway, he had the one with Jackie and Me, and that's what my mom allowed me to read because it was more, kind of dumbed down and kind of,
Falter too. Yeah.
certain words so that a 7-year-old is not learning the N word.
Right.
Right. So, but I did know that Philadelphia was out there screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming. Just. But obviously, I thought it was different words. I think the one the book we used was monkey, right? And it's kind of funny, that it's still not funny. Sorry, it's a terrible word to say, but it's just still it's funny on our ignorance as Americans. But that's not the way I was going for that. It's sad to see that people still make those comparisons. You know what I mean? The whole monkey and thing. It's just like, really, dude. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're throwing peanuts at Adam Jones when he goes to Boston. Like, are you serious? Like, you know what I mean? He was on the Orioles for a long time. For those of you that don't know him, or even look at Torrey Hunter. Torrey Hunter had a no trade deal or whatever, no trade clause, whatever, with the Red Sox. So whatever contract Torrey Hunter, the great Torrey Hunter signed, he would not go to Boston because of the many times he had heard the N word screamed at him by children, by parents, and by grown old people. He's like, I've heard it from all these different. Why would I ever want to go there? And then you look back and you see that Boston was the last team to integrate about 11, 12 years after Jackie Robinson came into the league. Right, it's a 1959, and it's funny. The guy that broke it. Let's see, I have his name right here. Oh, Elijah Pumpsy Green. He's from El Cerrito, which is where I before Redwood City.
Right.
And that area has it's a good area because it came out. Now it has CC Sabathia came out of Vallejo, Dontrell Willis and Jimmy Rollins come out of Alameda. So just like cool to see Marcus Semien right now, the shortstop for the A's. He's from El Cerrito and El Cerrito High, which I think Pumpsy Green went to. So it's just kind of cool to see those things, but. I don't know. Just like when you see it nowadays, and like they're still being racist in Boston, and people still have to be suspended, for life from Fenway for saying the N word. Like what? Like we see that on the movie, in the 42 movie, and we're like, ugh, that's sickening. That's disgusting. We see it now, you're like, gee, that's ignorance.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they did a great job. Now that I've done talking about the racism scenes that I thought were unnecessary, racism scenes that were necessary, of course, the one where he justifies himself being racist by saying I'm racist to everybody. That was a good scene. And then the scene in the crowd where the father has a little child, and he's saying, the N word and all these other derogatory comments towards Jackie Robinson. And the kid's like, I don't understand. And then by the more and more that his father's saying it, guess what happens? The kid starts saying it, and you're just like, oh my god, and I think that has a lot to do with what you're saying because guess what? He's going to grow up and be. He's going to grow up and be that racist, and he's going to teach his kid how to be racist. And we should be so far advanced as human beings. Segregation, all that stuff was like 60 years ago. And it takes us a year and a half to go from, a great, broken down telephone to what we have now in technology. We're still stuck in 1950 when it comes to human beings. Are you serious? It's just like, doesn't make any sense. If we're smart enough to technologically advance a telephone, why aren't we smart enough to understand that there's a huge difference between being a racist pig and a decent human being?
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point with racism being cyclical, right? If your parents and their grandparents are racist, and say they fought in the for the Confederate Army and they had that Confederate flag, you're gonna have that flag flying all the time. It's just, I don't know, but it's it just yeah, it just bothers me to see it. When it's not even when it's cyclical sometimes, but when it's just contagious, right? Like when I saw the kid in Washington have the Confederate flag, or from Eastern Washington, excuse me, have the Confederate flag, and we're like, oh, which part did your great 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 grandfather fight in? Oh, he didn't fight in the war at all because you guys are from God knows where in Europe. It's just like what
Right.
like what is the point of this? And we have it in Redwood Cities. We have a lot of people that are pretend cowboys. That drive around their giant lifted trucks and they have these giant Confederate flags flying. And you're like, in Redwood City?
Yeah. Right. Where are you from?
Like, you're Spanish. Like, get out of here, bro. Like, I don't know. It's just, it's whack, dude. So it's tough to see. You know what I mean? And it was bad during the Obama era for a little while too. Like, we had some protesters like in front of the Lucky supermarket, and they had a Hitler mustache on the Obama face, saying, it's just like, what are you doing? And these probably the same people right now that are okay with the way things are. But that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother segment. But yeah, I mean, I do like that you're able to kind of see through some of the racism, in the movie that you liked and that you didn't like, because sometimes the directors, to do a better job, I feel, and I think you do too, with displaying and also timing and strategizing how they show the racism, right? How they kind of like lead up to certain parts, or because they did a great job. The little boy, like when the little boy looks around in Cincinnati, I'm like, ooh, is he gonna say something? And he drops the N word. You're like, he sucks.
Yep. Yeah. And also, speaking of kids in the stands, the scene where Jackie Robinson is on third base and he's just totally messing with the pitcher's mind and gets to finally the pitcher to balk, which allows Jackie Robinson to score. And the little kid's like, he just combobulated the man. I was just like, that is just, oh, I love that scene. That was such a great scene.
And I don't remember if that's the same young child or if there was another one, but there was, I'm a super big crybaby, right? I get super emotional. But when there's, I almost like teared up at one part because there's a part where one of the little boys just puts his head down and starts praying. He's, please, Jackie, please show him we could do it. You know what I mean? It was just like, and they really, I thought that was a good job by the director and by the camera angles and the little boy, just the way that combined everything to show what it was like for a young boy out there. You know what I mean? Like getting to see, because I mean, men of Jackie's age or older, they kind of understood that they weren't going to be the one. That, that's the only reason Satchel Paige wasn't brought in to be the first player, right? He's just too old.
Right.
Like, he's 40-something years old. His arms had a lot of miles on it.
Right.
So he pitched when he was like, what, 50 or like 48 for the Indians? But anyway, yeah, it was crazy to see a little boy just putting his head down because that was the generation that Jackie was fighting for, right? Yep. It was good to see. They have the older generation as well that had lived through even more racism than Jackie had, but to show the future generation of what would become, just all these abilities and as sports that would be afforded. Not that it's equal at all, still to this day, but much more accessible to people of color to play. And look how much better it makes our sport.
Oh yeah. I mean,
look how much better it makes sports. We're so much better.
And it makes everybody better, because if you have someone that is better than you, especially being Americans, we're always striving to be better ourselves. And if you don't have someone that's better than you, then the strive to be better is limited. It's at a lower bar than if someone is so much better that you strive to be.
Yeah, and super random. I saw a clip, I don't know, like maybe 3-4 years ago, maybe, but it was Nate McLeod, if you remember him. He was an outfielder, I believe, for the Pirates at the time. And he, very white, blonde hair and everything, he had learned all the different dialects of Spanish of the Caribbean to be able to properly communicate with his teammates, whether they were from Venezuela, whether they're from, like I said, in the Caribbean, maybe for, further out in the DR out there, because they have different dialects. So it was awesome. They showed him on YouTube, like going through it. And it was quite humbling that he would learn the language of these other players, right? Because you see Johnny Cueto, right? Johnny Cueto, great pitcher for the Giants. He's been an all-star for so long, but he still has a translator everywhere he goes because he hasn't been able to master the language. So for him to communicate to non-Spanish speakers, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure him and Hunter Pence got along quite well, but how many heart-to-hearts did they have?
Right.
How to go out there and learn every, like all these different parts of dialects of the different language, I thought was kind of humbling. It was something that I would like to see more of, because feel like it adds more unity. Like the most unity you want to see fun baseball, go on YouTube and watch Team Puerto Rico, Team DR, Team Venezuela, Team the Netherlands, even because the all the islands that they have. I mean, it's just like it's insane to watch the unity, the brotherhood, and the fun baseball they play. And I'm just I'm wondering that perhaps baseball could be a little bit better about including and getting more children of ethnic races because it's not as easy for kids of African American backgrounds to play as it is now of kids of Latino backgrounds. Right, the good kids in the DR, the good kids in Venezuela, they're pulled out of their homes at 5 years old. And they're put in training, right? They're put right away. They're put into these little, these schools, and they're, okay, we'll get 10% of your whatever, blah blah blah. I mean, can you imagine if you did that with all the talent we have in America and the inner city youth that aren't able to get to play all these fancy sports? You know what I mean? Like if LeBron James had a baseball bat when he was a kid and the proper instructors and tee and was able to pitch, like, can you imagine how dominating he would be? Like,
and I think that you bring up a good point with that too. Is the money involved in training and I think a while back when we had the interview with the Negro League Museum director, you brought up something about finances and how hard it is for people of color to sort of get that advantage because of the finances that are involved.
Exactly, and it's tough too because like even though MLB reached out to the urban city, the inner city kids and urban areas, it's still a very disproportionate sport. Right? I coach, and a lot of the children I coach are predominantly white or Asian in this area in the Presidio area in San Francisco where I coach. And it's it's sad because we'll play maybe one team out of the whole season that comes from like some an area of the city that's not a predominantly white area, and it's all Latino and Black kids on the team. You know what I mean? And it's just like, why is that so segregated? And we're all, you know what I mean? Like, I get that you want to kind of play with your friends that you go to school with, but that just shows even on a greater scale, on a larger scale, that they're little league teams all the way down to the small fun things in life. Even those are segregated, right? Even those are kind of separated and changed because of your race. You know what I mean? And it's sad. So yeah, it's a bummer to see, and we hope that it changes. And we're my boss, he's awesome. He does a lot of work, a lot of good work in the Black community. He's half Black himself, so he's going through a lot of problems right now, and he's voicing his displeasures with the way that our government is handling things right now. And he's just really he's a lot of fun to learn under, my man Kyle. So yeah, he really goes out of his way to make sure he's always including inner city teams that are batting cages, doing whatever he can to get them in here, whatever we can do to help to spread the game of baseball to all ethnicities, because it's not just a rich kid sport. That's not how it should be.
And speaking of the duality of, say, Jackie Robinson and Branch Rickey, I want to touch on a little bit of Branch Rickey. What did you think of him as a person? Do you think that it had to be him as a person to do this, or do you see sort of Black people becoming part of the major league shortly? Let's just say a couple of years after, if there was no Branch Rickey. If Branch Rickey doesn't exist, how much longer do you think it would have took for a Black person to break into the major leagues?
Well, that's tough because at that time baseball hadn't yet reached the West Coast, so the coastal progressive cities are kind of stuck right in the New York area, right? So it would have had to be a New York team or like a San Francisco or an LA team, right? That's kind of what I'm thinking. So who knows? Because they eventually left the area and they went west, and so did the Giants, and then the Mets took on their colors of blue and orange and kind of just like, hey, who wants to be our fans?
Right.
Down the road. But for Branch, I liked his character in the movie. Obviously, kind of reminded me of Han Solo. That's just what I'm going to grow up with.
Sure, of course. You can't see Harrison Ford and not Han Solo.
I can't see anything else.
Or Indiana Jones, one of the two.
Seriously. So I like that. But you know what's funny? He brought up a really good point in the movie. I don't know if this is kind of fabricated or kind of played up to play on our heartstrings, but he said, "Would God like baseball? Right? Would God?" Too. I was like, would God be proud of Catholics? Honestly, that's a really deep thing, right? But I'm a Catholic, and I'm noticing more and more all these issues, all these kind of blind eye turns, all these people in power and white people getting away with a lot of things, whether it's priests, whether it's, at my Catholic high school, there's a lot of things. There's like, ooh, there's a lot of money in that buying a lot of things off. So it was funny because he not only made me think about sports, he also made me think about my own spirituality and my own faith, and because I have my own way of seeing things, right? So I'm not strictly by the book Catholic God, right? At all. I have my own variation. I'm much more liberal and progressive in my mind, but at the same time, you have to think, is the person that you believe in, the creator, is that person going to be proud of the games you played, the life you lived, and all in between. So that was kind of a cool, not a cool thing, but it was a very introspective kind of moment for me, where I was able to kind of step back and I was like, whoa, this is more than baseball too. This is morals. This is what you stand for in the world, and the stamp you put on it. And it's funny too because I also do think, Mike, not being too spiritual, I do think it was about money, right? Because he talked about Don Newcomb, and he talked about Roy Campanella, right? Mm-hmm. Those are the three players that he had considered bringing up, and sure enough, he got those other two players later, and they helped them win the pennant. I forgot they won like 4 or 5 pennants and 1 World Series together. They lost. They won 1-4 against the Yankees in all their 5 World Series against each other. But anyway, it was just crazy because he and it. Who was it? Was it one of the players in the movie? I don't know. Yeah, it was one of the white players. Sits down and he goes, he just got you because he wants to get all the black dollars too, or something like to that effect. And I was like, that's true. It's like, think about the marketing from a businessman's standpoint. You know what I mean? Money's green. So if you're really able to put your prejudices aside and just really look at the bottom line, why wouldn't you involve Latino players? Why wouldn't you involve black players? Why wouldn't you try to get players from Japan and Korea? You know what I mean? Like, why not?
Because guess where all the fans are going to go that are Korean or black, especially in that time. There's no black baseball players, and you have the only black baseball players. Guess where all these people who are fans of teams that are black, they're going to go and support that team that has the black player on it.
Oh, 100%. So, yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? Because like on one hand, you want to think that Mr. Ricky had great morals and the Methodist belief, and him and Jackie being faith in the same faith and everything. But the other hand too, it's a dollars game, and if you're losing enough games, he said, I don't give a damn if it's an elephant. I'll play him if he can help me win games.
Right. Yeah. Leo DeRocher, that was great. He's like, I don't care. I don't care who it is. If he's going to help us win, then that's all I care about.
Right.
Go ahead. Yeah, it's amazing. It totally is. And then you have Pee Wee Reese, that during the game in his hometown, putting his arm around Jackie Robinson, and that was a true event where he sort of said, "Hey, we're in this together." And trivia question: do you know who played Pee Wee Reese?
Shoot, I just saw it with something too. Remind me though.
Friday Night Lights.
Oh,
quarterback.
Just watching Friday Night Lights too.
Yeah. I had the same impression. I'm like, who is that? He looks so familiar. So actually, I had to look it up and put it in and go, that's why he looks familiar. But it's they had, what was the saying at the end? Something about they'll remember you tomorrow. Something to that effect. Can't remember the last saying in there.
It was kind of almost, to me, it reminded me of The Sandlot when the Babe walks out of the dream, right? Heroes get remembered, but legends never die.
Yeah, exactly.
Robinson is such a legend that, like, look, I mean, here's another thing I wanted to talk about too. I've been watching a lot of baseball highlights on YouTube because I am so bored and missing it. And I'm, a lot of times it shows highlights, just randomly of different games, and it's awesome to see when it's on Jackie Robinson Day because you see everyone wearing number 42. Right, because a lot of times, like I'm watching these outfielders diving catches, and you see all these these number 42 sprinting back and making these catches, or number 42 hitting a home run, and it's just cool because ever since Mariano Rivera retired, no other player is allowed to wear 42, only on Jackie Robinson Day. So kind of tying into the maybe one day we'll all wear number 42, kind of tying into that.
Right, that's exactly what I was talking about. Yeah, that's it. Maybe one day we'll all wear 42, and here we are. We're all wearing 42. I mean, all of them are out there. Right. That's exactly what I was talking about. Yeah, that's it. Maybe one day we'll all wear 42. And here we are. We're all wearing 42. I mean, all of them are out there. and and once what is it, May or April or whatever day that is. Do you, do you think, and also tying into marketing too? Speaking of Branch Rickey, that sounds exactly like what Branch Rickey would do. Equal for all, but let's get some green while we're doing it as well.
Exactly.
If you could retire any number and have a day outside of Jackie Robinson's day, what number would you retire for everybody to wear once?
Are we sticking to baseball?
Yeah.
Okay. Ooh. If I had to pick a day and somebody that was change the sport, oh man, obviously I want to say Willie Mays because I'm wearing my Willie Mays jersey, right? But man, Roberto Clemente.
There you go. That's a good one.
I think the what he stood for, and the way that he passed, right, flying down. His plane was too heavy, full of goods to try to help. I think it was a hurricane, or I forgot what it was in one of the islands.
Right? Yeah, I think it was a hurricane. It was definitely some kind of traumatic event going on that he was there.
Yeah, Nicaragua, right? Is it Nicaragua?
I believe so. Yeah.
It's kind of crazy because Roberto Clemente, they never found his body, right? So he just went out to sea, and that's kind of, I don't know. He had 3,000 hits on the, when he passed, he was stuck exactly at number 3,000, and he was just such a, I don't know, it was just such an inspirational, such a huge player, such a big figure in the Puerto Rican culture, and inspired so many fantastic outfielders from all over that area. Right, like you can't watch Vladimir Guerrero throw the ball from right field and not think Roberto Clemente.
Oh God, no. Right? I mean, yeah.
I just can't.
Yeah. Exactly. I remember my dad would tell me stories that he would throw. He'd get the ball in the corner of the outfield by the fence and throw people out trying to go from first to third.
Feet the wrong way. He turned his feet the wrong way. Like if you watch Roberto Clemente highlights, he will do things where like he doesn't go with momentum. He just like stops, chills, and throws a freaking laser. Like my arm would fall off throwing like half of that. I'm like, dude, how are you not like? He doesn't round it. He doesn't set his his lead foot. He just like grabs it wherever he is, kind of goes and just throws an absolute missile. Like Cespedes.
Dang, that's just crazy. Yeah, he had that arm. Now speaking of players. We got our lineups going in. What we did was we started divvying up position players. You got a handful of positions, I got a handful of positions, and we picked what we thought were sort of in remembrance of sort of Jackie Robinson and players. So why don't you go first with whatever position you want to go with, and then I'll follow up next.
Yeah, I'll kind of just go down the line what I had. So I gave myself the middle infielders, corner outfielders, starter, and a closer, just for those of us that we know. But yeah, I'll start off with my second baseman. Obviously, going to be Jackie Robinson. Just huge inspirational player. Got to lead to all these fantastic names you're going to hear after this, and then some. And just what he did for America, what he did for all of the Black community, and what he also did for other communities of color, of minorities that were trying to get into professional sports. Just transcends everything. So
yeah. Even though interestingly there was always Black players up to a point, up to the gentleman's agreement. They would say they were John Gonzalez when they were John whatever Stevenson, but up until that point, up until Jackie Robinson, there was Black people weren't really involved at all, and he sort of just, as we know, opened it all up for everybody. I'm gonna go with catcher, of course, the position I played, the position I love, and catcher, of course, Josh Gibson. You can't go wrong with that. I mean, he was noticed to be the Black Babe Ruth, probably even better.
And he said Grace too.
Yes, he did. And they recorded, because they didn't really keep very good stats at that time. But what's been probably known is that he hit a home run every 10 at bats. Probably hit about 800 home runs. And then the legend, of course, is that he actually hit one out of Yankee Stadium, which nobody, not even Babe Ruth, could do. So, yeah, just being the home run hitter he is, and just being sort of the character he is, definitely Josh Gibson is my catcher.
Yeah, and I used to be able to play with Josh Gibson in my old video games. You can unlock former Negro League players. So I'd have Satchel Paige, Gibson. Oh my lord, so much, so much fun. All right, now we're gonna go to the shortstop spot for me. I got Mr. Cub Ernie Banks, man in the shortstop position for me. Even though he was a lovable loser on for the team, not in any way was Mr. Banks ever a loser, but the Cubs are just known as lovable losers. He's just consistent. I don't know if it's like 13 or 14-time All Star, just always there, always upbeat, always smiling. Kind of an afterthought of the great, black outfielders because he was a black infielder on a losing, on teams that were constantly, out of the pennant race. I think that if he had played for a different team, he definitely a better team in a better marketed area. I think Mr. Banks would have had a much more known career.
Yeah, especially playing the position that he did too. It's sort of hard. But yeah, he's definitely one of the players that I was told about growing up.
Yeah.
And then at first base, I went with Buck Leonard,
Yes.
and he was sort of the another power hitter, one of the another Gray. What's interesting, his sort of legend was that he was the Black Lou Gehrig, but a lot of people say that Lou Gehrig was the white Buck Leonard.
God, yeah, he's another guy in video games that hit Hanks, Mike, oh my lord, dude, he would just barrel like further than further than Babe Ruth, further than Mickey Mantle, the other guys he could play with in that game. Like he would hit
That's awesome.
Speaking of Barry Bonds, I kind of had a little slip there. Left field, I got Mr. Barry Bonds, one of my favorite players of all time. Getting to grow up and watch him hit number 73, number 756, just all these different milestones. Yes, it was tainted. Yes, it hurts to talk about it, but still, for how talented he was, pre-steroids, during steroids, after steroids, just looking at everything, the whole body of work that he did, it's going to be hard to find another athlete that dominates for as long as he did in baseball.
Yeah, and steroids, non-steroids, you still got to hit the ball. Still got to make contact. I could put as much steroids in my system as a human possibly. I ain't gonna be hitting some 500-yard bomb. It's just not gonna happen. Or hit any pitch for that matter coming from a pro athlete's arm. It's not gonna happen. So you still got to hit it. And then third base, Frank Robinson. So, 14-time All-Star, and he did it in both leagues. 8 times in National League, 6 times in American League. 586 home runs. Interestingly, talking about history, he was the first black manager in baseball, and that's one of the major reasons why I picked Frank Robinson to sort of tie in with Jackie Robinson, is the fact that he broke the color barrier as far as being a manager.
And I might be wrong on this one, but I think he also too was the first player to be MVP in both the American League and the National League. But I might be wrong on that one. But
could very well be. Yeah, especially how being the All-Star, 8 and 6 times.
Yeah, wouldn't be surprised. All right, in right field, I got Hammer and Hank over there, Mr. Hank Aaron. Another man that had to go through a lot of racial injustices just to play baseball. He was just trying to hit home runs, and people are setting him death threats when he approached 714, the mark of Babe Ruth. And that's just, in the 70s, for that to happen was just disgusting. But it was funny because what had happened was Hank Aaron hit the home run off a black pitcher, right? And he had his black teammate, Dusty Baker, on deck. So it was like all these white people were all freaking out, all these things. So it was just like the camera only showed, it was only on these black players. It was awesome. Also, super random, the left fielder that he hit the home run over was Bill Buckner. Super funny.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
interesting.
Before his knees went to hell and he had to move to first base.
Right? Wow.
But also it was a cool thing too when you watch the Hank Aaron home run breaking record. The record breaker. There are two like hipsters that look like they're coming from like a 70s, rock band, kind of like a garage rock band, kind of like laid back thing. But they have these like big old afro hair, and they're all running around like shaking his hand. So it's funny to see two white men that are very normal, average looking white men running with Hank Aaron. Hank Aaron's kind of like looking around like, all right, am I gonna get hit from over here?
I'm gonna get killed, right?
Forms like what's gonna happen? Where's my family? So yeah, it was just kind of crazy to see that Hank Aaron had to go through that some 20 odd years after Jackie Robinson had already gone through some of that BS.
Yeah, and as you said, getting death threats just because Babe Ruth was white. What the hell?
What? Where?
Yeah, it makes no sense to me whatsoever. And then, so speaking of the outfield, I had center fielder, and of course, I mean, you know who it is, Willie Mays, my dad's favorite player. There it is. Yep, 24. You know, home runs, defense, probably one of the greatest catches ever in center field.
There's a long drive, way back in center field, way back, it is gone! Willie Mays just brought this crowd to its feet with a catch, which must have been an optical illusion to a lot of people.
I think it was Vic Wertz who hit it, and just and then on top of that, he keeps a guy at going from second to third. He keeps a guy after he throws. I mean, they have a video on it that you should check out. How great they break it down. How great that catch actually was, and also interesting story to that is Willie Mays always had a little sort of reflex where he would move his cap anytime he thought he'd be able to get to a hard ball. He would just do this, and you see in the video when that ball's hit, he sort of does this, and it's like he knew from jump that he was going to get to that ball, and just it's just amazing play and just a great player. Almost quit baseball. I don't know if you knew that. He struggled opening in the major leagues. Really couldn't hit. Called his dad crying, I can't do this. I'm done. Dad said, man up, do it. And, you're talented enough, get out there and do it. And ever since then, he's who he is.
I'm pretty sure his father played Negro League ball. So I think that was, to call back his father, and his father showed him, hey, I went through a lot rougher times than you did. Let's go ahead. Let's go, take advantage of the possibility and the opportunity you've been given. And lo and behold, we have the greatest all-around player ever until Mike Trout retires. That's for another day. I know, I'm not the Willie Mays backer for life. Trout does some things, and you're just like, dude, you have Brian Urlacher in center field, like robbing home runs. Like, what do you want me to say? Like,
yeah, right. That's true.
For another person that was, almost inhumane in the way how good he was, my starting pitcher is going to be Bob Gibson. I don't know if there are any more dominating pitchers. The fact that he was so good that they had to lower the mound to make it more fair for the hitters, to kind of drive up, revenue and slow down the pitchers. It's just insane that Bob Gibson was that good. Just if you look at some of his ERA, some of his full years, some of the years that he pitched the Cardinals through the World Series, where he's like pitching games 1, 4, and 7, or 1, 3, 6, and just shoving every game. Like, goodness gracious, that guy.
Yeah, totally dominating, as you said. In fact, I had two pitchers in mind when we decided on doing that list. Bob Gibson was one, and then the guy I went with, Satchel Paige, as we talked about earlier, was the other guy. So I was happy with either one. And I mean, the guy was like 43 years old, playing in the major leagues and finished a 6-1 record with a 2.18 ERA. I mean, 42 years old, and hitters can't hit off of him. So he was sort of, if people out there don't know much about Paige, think of Muhammad Ali as a baseball player. He would just throw pitches and call it whatever. He just very showmanship, talkative, just having a lot of fun out there.
Crazy little all these wind-ups.
Yeah, totally. Just a total fun baseball player to watch videos. So yeah, definitely check him out. And yeah, he was probably number 2, just because we don't even know how old he was. He could have been 48, throwing 2.18 ERAs out there, and Hall of Famer, of course. So he's my starting pitcher.
It's like Albert Pujols. You don't really know how old they are. You just respect this. You're like, all right, you can be however old you want. You're amazing.
You're still great. Yeah, regardless, you're still great. Yep.
Speaking of a great electric player from the NL Central, I have our closer Lee Smith. Coming in there, electrifying. Just doing damage. 480 saves, I believe, close to near close to 500. So yeah, a lot of great stuff on that. So that is the conclusion of my guys. You have one more, I believe.
I do. Designated hitter, and there's a lot of players I could have picked that were designated hitter, but I kind of wanted to sort of stick with the theme of Jackie Robinson and expand it a little bit, and went into the Dominican area and played for the Red Sox. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Big Poppy.
Big Poppy, David Ortiz, and just amazing. 541 home runs, 10 times All-Star, 3-time World Series champ, 7-time Silver Slugger, and definitely soon to be a Hall of Famer. Just remarkable. I mean, you can shoot him and he still bounces back. So what else do you want from a guy, right? That's as awesome as David Ortiz. So, a lot of players I could choose from, but I think that David Ortiz, someone current and also someone great as well.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So thanks, Neiko, for joining us. Appreciate it. I can't wait for next week and doing this again. We need to come together, figure out what our next movie will be, but I'm sure it's going to be a whole lot of fun. And thanks again. Have a great day. Have a great week.
Too, partner. Thank you, everybody. That was a blast.
Totally. So subscribe, do all those wonderful things, and we'll see you guys next week. Peace.